5 minutes past our schedule, so let's get started. Very good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining our online user group meetup. We run this every month, third or fourth week of every month. We will run this meetup. We'll pick up a specific topic on AWS, and I'll have the speakers who are who are experienced in that topic comes and presents in our meetup. And we had a lot of sessions in the AWS one, and I'm very excited, very eager to be part of this session today. So on the security analytics, we have Raji Krishnamurthy. She's in. I've been following her from the beginning when I started learning AWS cloud technologies. I've seen her blogs, and I've also seen her, doing a lot of speaking activities as well. And I'm very interested to follow her and have her today in our user group meetup. And very, very eagerly waiting for that demo and the workshop on the Amazon Security Lake that she's going to take us through today. And what we are going to do today is Raji would take us through that topic along with a demo session. And followed by that, we will have a question and answer session. And if people are interested, we can have a virtual networking through breakout rooms at the end of the session. So that's the agenda today. I would want to hand over to Raji to take us through on the topic that I'm eagerly waiting for, and I hope everybody is eagerly waiting for that. Handing it over to Raji.
Thank you, Nambi. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. So to give you a quick introduction of what I do, so I have been in the IT industry it's going to be 20 years in few months. So I have background. I started as a developer and then specialized in .NET Microsoft technologies. And then when cloud came in, I moved into AWS. So I have been working with AWS since past 7 years. And it's been quite an exciting journey full of learning, experiments, got to do a lot of thought leadership activities. And I try to keep myself active in connecting with similar, like-minded people who are passionate about cloud and AWS in particular. And I thank Nambi for giving me this opportunity. And I look forward to do even more sessions and also learn from the sessions that he conducts every month. So today we are going to talk on a topic called security analytics. All of us are familiar with data analytics. Security analytics, at least I have not seen much being spoken about, but this is an emerging need which every organization is working towards, especially when cyber security has gained so much of focus in the last couple of years. So that's what I'm going to talk on, security analytics and how AWS helps us to do analytics on security data. And anytime you want to, let's keep this session as interactive as possible. Anytime you want to interrupt, please come forward. And if you want to exchange anything when I talk, please come forward. And let's have it like a discussion rather than me talking. So I'm sharing my screen now. Nambi, I think you have to give me the access, or I can share. Okay.
Yeah, you can try to share that.
Yeah, I can share. Okay. So let me know once my screen is up.
Yeah, it's loading.
Okay. So has it come up?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So you're able to see the slide?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So first we'll talk about what is cyber data, and then what is like doing analytics on cyber data. And then we'll talk about a capability from Amazon, which exactly solves these challenges around cyber data, which is called Amazon Security Lake. And this is a new capability that was launched. So it was actually announced only in the last reInvent, and it was in preview. And it came into general availability in June of this year, which is like 6 weeks or almost two. It's been 2 months since it came for public consumption. And we are going to talk on how we can enable this service, how to use this service, and what is the art of possibility. And I'm going to try to talk as much as possible in the next 2 hours. And then we'll also have a short demo on especially focusing on the setting up of Security Lake, and also a few, we'll just scratch the surface of on how you can use the lake to create insights. So before we get into cyber analytics, let's understand what cyber data actually is. So what is, like, we all know what is data, but what is data which we term it as cyber data. So any type of data which gives you an intelligence around security, anything which could be coming from a security product or a tool, or it can help the security team, or it can be connected with security. So even data on an application. So if the application is generating logs around certain key activities that a user does, then that log is helpful for security, because the timestamp at which a transaction or a critical business action was taken, the timestamp also helps in deriving the larger picture. So, like many other fields in security as well, it's always important to have a bird's eye view of how your data is being collected. The reason being, there will be a lot of relationships among these data. So it's not that a single data is going to help you in security. You have to bring a number of data, either they will be directly or indirectly related to each other. You have to bring together, consolidate, and then you have to create an intelligence out of it. And that's what cyber analytics is all about. So what I'm saying is a cyber data need not necessarily be coming directly from a security tool or a product. Even the peripheral systems logs will also help you in deriving the larger picture. So the ones that you see on the slide, they are not the only cyber data, but I have just put down the few key ones which we usually work in our day-to-day life. So it could be a user navigating through your application. It could be internal teams, how they are accessing various systems. So that data will help in cyber. And of course, the logs, which gets collected by the telemetry logs. And then the vulnerability. So there will be assets where which might be vulnerable. There will be infrastructure which might be vulnerable. So data around this will also help you to derive insights. Then networking data. So networking and security, they're closely related to each other. So having the right network best practice, or if there is any vulnerability or any loophole in any of the networking components, it could be an entry point for cyber attackers. So networking data is quite useful and important in the world of cyber. Then threat intelligence. So this is a kind of data which is external. So there will be data collected in the internet, which will tell you that so and so vulnerability has been found, and if you have certain applications or certain systems, you patch them for these vulnerability, or you watch out for this vulnerability. So such kind of intelligence is called a threat intelligence, and it is something which comes minute by minute. So you have to be active. You have to be cognizant of what is getting released, or what there could be certain IP address which suddenly could come up as a malicious. It could be reported as a malicious IP address. So there will be some IP from which attacks could have been happened or launched successfully. So if we find that IP address within our IT systems, then it's dangerous. So there are a lot of open source threat intelligent platforms which keeps releasing this information. So cyber data is not just the data which is collected within our organization, but we should also be aware of what is happening outside our organization. So by now you will know that the data which is related to, or which helps us to derive cyber threats, it's not something which is easy to manage. It's quite voluminous. So that's where the whole challenge of how do we derive intelligence out of such huge volume of data comes. So how do we manage? How do we control the growth, or how do we know which data is relevant? So that's where the whole the talk of cyber data analytics comes. So like any other data analytics platform, here also we should look at broadly at 5 different stages. So at the first stage, we will think about what data we should collect. So anytime you want to set up a cyber data analytics solution, the first and foremost will be what are going to be your ingestion or your source data. So that you have to pre-decide, and you have to keep it. And then what are you going to do with this data? So that's what the second stage is about, processing. So this is similar to a data analytics or a data lake setup. So how do you clean? How do you take the data which is relevant for you? How do you structure them? How do you ensure that there is standardization of data? Because you are collecting data from different places, right? So different tools or different applications or different network, they talk their own language. There is no common format. There is no common language among them. And a common format is essential, because only then we will be able to do analytics on top of it. So if each one is its own format, then again it has its own challenges. So data processing is a stage where you clean the data or you structure the data. And then comes the threat detection. So now that we have the data, how are we going to use it to identify what are the threats, what are the anomalies? So given that we know the threats, what is the risk? So with the threat information, when I say threat, it need not just necessarily be a threat like an external threat, but I'm more referring to the internal threat. So what threats is our organization exposing? What are the vulnerabilities our organization is exposing? So with that, we will be able to calculate how much of risk are we carrying. So that's the risk analysis. Now, based on this information of risk and threats, we will be able to do a better intelligence around decision making. So these insights will help us to decide what strategic steps we need to take, and how do we articulate it to the CXOs, and accordingly do the remediation. It could be a strategic remediation, or it could be a tactical remediation. So the downstream process will start after the risk analysis. So that's what decision making is all about. So I hope you are with me. So that's about cyber analytics. Now that we know that we need to do cyber analytics, again, I'm just giving us a gist on the challenges. So what are the challenges in what we spoke about analytics? So like similar to any other data analytics, here also the challenges revolve around volume, complexity. And many a times in the cyber world, many systems will talk about false positives. So there will be a certain alerts which will get created, but it may not be an actual threat, or it happens vice versa as well. So the system will not report anything, but then there would have happened some compromise, or some backdoor entry would have happened. So this is mainly due to the fact that there is huge volume of data behind it. And then evolving threats. So the external threat intelligence platforms are quite active, as I said. So it's every day you see something or the other happening. Now fusing that data along with our internal data is a challenge. And then skill gap, right? So now there are too many tools. Each tool operates in its own way. So tools like, there will be a tool for firewall, there will be a tool for data loss prevention, there will be a logging tool, or there will be an application performance tool. So each of these tools are a specialized area of its own. Now, it's very difficult to find someone who understands all of these tools, or majority of them. It's practically quite challenging. So skill gap is definitely a challenge to do cyber analytics. And then privacy. So we are talking about data, right? And when it comes to data, we should also be wary about how are we controlling the data. It should not leak outside the organization. And if we are storing certain data, we should ensure that it's not having sensitive information, and we are archiving it properly, or we're backing it up properly. So we have to also think about regulations and privacy. And then since data is coming from different places, integrating them in one single source of truth is a challenge. So integration is a challenge. And of course, all of these amount to cost. So, broadly, these are the minimal challenges that you would see in setting up a cyber data analytics solution. So many a times, organizations are not able to successfully do this. And this is a challenge which you will find in every industry, every customer, big or small. They would love to have such a setup, but in majority of the cases, because of these challenges, they are not able to go forward. Now, how do we help them, especially customers who are in AWS cloud? How do we help them out is what we are going to see today. So in the last reInvent 2022, like in the last week of November, Amazon released a service called Amazon Security Lake. So this is similar to a data lake. So here you will have a security data lake. So this is a new service which consolidates all of the AWS logs in a single source of truth. So once you enable Security Lake, there are certain AWS logs which it will automatically ingest, and it will create a common repository in which all of these logs are stored, a single location. And it's not going to be charging for these data. There is no pricing for security lake per se. The more data it accumulates, that much would be the storage cost incurred. And what it does is, the specialty about the lake is not ingesting the AWS logs. It's about how it has the capability to ingest external logs. So when I say external logs, any of the security tools. So if you look at in any customer, they cannot survive with AWS services alone. There will be scenarios where they would have procured a third-party security product, which we call it as ISV vendors. So there are hundreds of partners for AWS who specialize on such products. To give you some examples, for firewalls, you will find Checkpoint, Palo Alto, and then for the vulnerability management, you will find Trend Micro, Qualys, and then there are a number of security tools, and also for collecting all of the security events in one single place, you will find SIEM tools. Many customers have it. So IBM QRadar or Splunk, Sumo Logic. Then there will be tools for telemetry like Datadog. So the list goes on. And when you consolidate all of these tools, you will find that the number is quite huge, and it's quite challenging to manage them. So the specialty of this security lake is you can ingest data from these tools into the lake. So it need not necessarily be AWS logs alone. Even the external logs can be ingested into the lake. And not only the tools, even on-prem data. So if customers are hybrid cloud, if they have certain systems at on-prem, you can collect the data from the on-prem application. And not just hybrid, even multi-cloud. So if a customer is in AWS and in Azure and Google Cloud, for example, you can ingest data from any of the cloud resources as well. So, that's the specialty of security lake, where it's able to centralize discrete sources of data, and it is able to normalize them and maintain a single source of truth. Now, how is it that it's able to ingest data from these different disparate sources? Is by bringing in a common data format. Now, similar to how you have REST API, in REST API, what happens is the individual applications could be written in any language. They could be their proprietary platforms, but as long as they expose the data which is needed through a REST API, through JSON, it would be able to communicate with another application or another API. So there is a common protocol which got established, the REST API, right? So every APIs, they talk this language, no matter what their source is. It's a similar concept here. No matter where your or what your security tool is, as long as the logs talk a common format, security lake will be able to understand it. So this common format is called Open Cybersecurity Framework. So it's called Open Cybersecurity Schema Framework, OCSF. So this has a specific standard of log format. And as long as the external data source which you plan to ingest into security lake, as long as it follows this data format, it will be able to ingest into the security lake tables. So that's how it's able to centralize, and many of the security products. So as on date, more than 60 ISVs, 60 vendors like Palo Alto, Checkpoint, they are already ensuring that their products create data in OCSF format. So there is no worry about how do we ingest them. And also, if you have certain applications which has been developed in-house and you want to ingest those logs into Security Lake, you can convert the format of those application logs into OCSF, and then you can bring it into Security Lake. So there is a small ETL that you need to do to convert the format of those application logs to OCSF. Okay, so I just skipped one slide before. There's nothing but it tells you what the features of Security Lake is. So this is an AWS slide. So it builds, when you enable Security Lake, it itself builds the lake for you. It will centralize. It will help you to manage storage cost. And also another thing is you need not be tied to the AWS analytics. If your customer has their own analytic tools, you can bring in those tools as well. So we are going to see that in the demo. Okay, so I'll quickly move on to, before I go here, I would like to show you in the AWS console how Security Lake looks and how you can go about setting it up. So I'm not going to set it up.
But you want to take the questions as well in between, or at the end?
Yeah, if I can take up one or two questions now so that we ensure everybody is on the same page.
Okay. So I saw a question from Arun. Is OCSF a language like JSON?
Yeah, it's similar to, we are going to see how OCSF is structured and how it looks. So probably let's do that maybe. Okay, so I'm sharing my screen again. Let me know if my screen is up.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so you can see this. It's an open source project. Okay, so it's a standard which was developed a few years back. It's been there for a while, and this is the schema information. So there are various versions here. So you will find RC2, RC3. Security Lake is now following RC2, and so the data with security, or at least the AWS data that we see in Security Lake, they follow the RC.2 version. So how this entire thing is structured is this OCSF schema is for security data. It's for cyber data. So broadly, you have these categories. So system activity, findings, audit activity, network activity, and configuration or inventory. So system activity are those tools which are around, file system monitoring. So there are products which will tell you, which will monitor for the tampering of files. So the logs that such tools generate, those logs fall under system activity. Now, under system activity, there are these classifications. So based on the nature of your security data, you have to choose what's going to be your category. All right. So if now this you have to only worry if your security tool does not talk the OCSF language. But most of the tools do, so you don't have to worry about it. But I'm just giving you the information, the background behind OCSF. For example, if there is an identity and access management a tool. So like there are many tools like Ping Identity, Okta. Many organizations use these tools for IDP. Now, the logs that they generate, they fall under authentication or authorization. So depending on the nature of your security tool, you have to first decide what would be the class. So say, for example, you decide to bring in a security tool which does authorization. So this is the schema of the format of the data. Okay, so again, don't get overwhelmed by this. It's very less chance that you need to worry about conversion of format. Many of the ISV products are already generating data in OCSF. Now, this you have to look at only when you bring in data from in-house applications. So there might be applications which were developed by the customer, applications which are legacy, or even some applications which cannot be moved into cloud. Those applications might generate logs which you might want to bring into Security Lake. Now, those logs definitely they will not talk OCSF. So you have two choices here. You can just not convert into OCSF. There is also a possibility to bring it into Athena. You can just, as long as you bring it into S3 with Athena, you can use the security tables and you can derive the insights out of it. So that's fairly simple, and I'm going to show you one example for that. So in a nutshell, it's not that you have to convert the data for every tool. It's very less chance that you will do this conversion. It's already taken care by AWS and the vendors already. Okay, so that's about OCSF. Any other question? So Arun, is your query on OCSF clear? Okay, and anybody else has any question on OCSF or anything which I spoke? Okay, so I'll take that. I'll assume that everybody is fine, and I'll move on. So first, I'm going to show you on how do you set up Security Lake. Now, I have already set up Security Lake, so I'm going to straight away go to the console. Now, to enable Security Lake, right? So there are certain prerequisites. So the recommended best practice is whichever AWS environment you are going to set up Security Lake, it should have an AWS organization. So it expects a shared service account in which you will set up Security Lake. So all of you are aware of the landing zone concept. I'll quickly bring up the landing zone. So let's take a typical landing zone. All right. Okay. So you have this landing zone, right? So these activities are done as part of Cloud Foundation. So before you start migrating or when you want to start fresh in AWS, you will build the landing zone, and only then you will start onboarding the applications. So as a first step, you will have a master account, and then under the master account, you will be creating shared services account. And there will be separate accounts for security. One account will be created for security, one account for logging, and there will be one account for audit, and then there will be other accounts like which could be shared services, mostly DevOps. There will also be a shared service account for network. And after that, you will start creating the member accounts. So that's the recommended process for setting up the landing zone. Now, when you want to enable security lake for your landing zone, you have to decide in which account you want to enable the security lake. So that's called the delegated administrator. So you have to use that account, and in that account, security lake will be enabled. All right, so you have to log in into that account, and then you have to go into, you just type security lake here, and you will see certain screens, which I have taken a screenshot for your benefit so that you know how to set it up. And also AWS has very good documentation around setting up security lake. So they have a user guide PDF. You can just follow that, and it's quite descriptive and exhaustive. So the first step when you set up security lake, so you will see a screen like this, and you have to, once you decide in which account you are going to set up security lake, you also by the side decide the region. So it's a region specific service. It's not a global service. So if you are enabling, say, in Sydney region, then all the logs which are generated in Sydney will automatically come and get deposited. And if you want logs from other regions, there is a concept called roll-up region. So you can select which regions other than the home region, what are the other regions you want logs to come and get ingested. So once you click Get Started, it will ask you what are the logs and events. So you can either choose all, or you can you can select what log and event source you want. So Security Lake automatically, it takes care of the CloudTrail, Route 53, Security Hub, and VPC flow logs. Again, CloudTrail, it expects that the organization, the CloudTrail for the entire organization is set up and it's in a working state. So, so it needs the organization level CloudTrail to be enabled, and it should be in a collection mode. It should not be inactive. So this organization CloudTrail will have CloudTrails collected from across the entire landing zone, and from whichever region you want. So Security Lake will ingest this organization CloudTrail. And then if you have enabled in Sydney, it will of course ingest around 53 query logs from all the accounts from Sydney region. Similarly, Security Hub and VPC flow log. And then I spoke about regions, right? So by default, it will consume from the home region. But if you want any specific additional regions, you can do that as well. And also accounts. So either you can enable the security lake for all the accounts, or you can select which account you want to enable. So once you do these selections, here is the roll-up region, which I mentioned earlier. So other than the home region, if you want any other multiple other regions, you can add here. And this is where the storage cost optimization comes. So Security Lake collects the layer, all the logs, and it keeps in one single location, right? So here you can decide how long you want the logs to be kept. So that way you will indirectly reduce the amount of storage cost, and you will be able to better optimize the storage and also the incurring subscription cost. So that's about the setting it up. And once you...
And before you go, so in the previous slide, you were telling about the source for the data, right? So
yeah, this one.
All logs and event sources. And it specifically says about CloudTrail, Route 53, in the thing. So So if I'm running a container application or running on EKS workloads, so how does those kind of data gets into the security lake if I have an malicious activity happening in my containers which are running in my EKS workloads?
Okay, so the container logs, a CloudTrail will be monitoring the container activity. If not, if you are sending it to CloudWatch, then from the CloudWatch you can bring it to S3, and Security Lake can integrate with S3, and you can bring the logs.
So if I'm using a third-party tool, then that has to be ingested through OCSF framework.
Yes, a third-party tool, mostly it will already be OCSF ready. So I'll also show you how you can check whether a third-party tool is OCSF or not. You can just pretty much check it in the AWS portal. I'll show you the link. So mostly it will be the known, all of the known tools are already OCSF ready. In case they are not, then you have to do the conversion. And that too, the conversion is only applicable if it is a security data. In your case, you spoke about container monitoring, right? So let's assume you are using a third-party container tool and you want to ingest the container logs into Security Lake. Now, those container logs, they are not necessarily a cyber data. It is a monitoring data. So such logs, it's very simple. You just have to bring them into S3, and the Athena will create. You can create a glue table out of S3, and you can do the analytics in Athena or any other tool that you have. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, so that's about setting it up. So these are broadly the three steps. I'll just quickly reiterate. So once you decide, the first and very most step is deciding which account, shared service account you want Security Lake. And again, it need not necessarily be a shared service account, but it should be an account in the landing zone, and it should be centralized. So you cannot keep enabling Security Lake in a number of accounts. It doesn't work that way. So in the landing zone, you decide one particular account where you want Security Lake to be running. So you enable that, and you also decide the region upfront. And then you configure the sources, you configure the region, you configure the accounts. So either it is the entire, all the accounts or any specific account. And then are there any additional roll-up region? And then the storage class optimization. But this is quite important. What happens is if we ignore this, like loads of data gets accumulated, and even the analytics becomes slow. So, do this optimization exercise without fail. And yeah, so that's about setting up. So once you set it up, this is how it will look. You're able to see my screen, right? Okay. So it will tell you what regions have been enabled. If there are any subscribers, sources. So these are the sources. So these are all the AWS sources, which are by default. So once you enable Security Lake, you will get these sources. And then okay, so by default, you get CloudTrail, S3 data events, Lambda executions, VPC, Route 53, and Security Hub. And these are the subscribers, and these are the regions, and these are the custom sources. So I'll explain what these terminologies actually mean. So I'll bring up my slide again. Okay, you're able to see my slide?
Yes.
Yeah. Right. So as I said, once you enable security lake, all of these sources will automatically start flowing in. And then the partner ISV security tools data and any COTS application or any other data that we want. Now, these get ingested into security lake where all of these will talk the OCSF language, and this is where the centralization happens. Now, subscriber are those applications or tools which will be using the security lake. So any analytics that you do on top of security lake is what a subscriber essentially is. Now, in the AWS native world, you can use Athena, and you can also use SageMaker. Now, there will be certain additional platforms like an XDR platform which customers might have, or customers might have their own analytics strategy or certain tools or applications. So those can be a subscriber for security lake. So that's what you see in the console, where you saw one specific menu on. It's not. So you saw this menu on okay, on this custom sources, right? So that's what this is about. So if you are bringing any external source, then you create this custom source. And if there are any external subscribers, like any external platforms which is consuming the security lake, then you create a subscriber. So that's what the subscriber and the sources is all about. Okay, so once you set up security lake, by default, I said you will get the VPC flow logs, the CloudTrail, the Lambda executions. So this is how the tables look. So all of those data you will be able to see in the Athena module. But before that, how it is reaching till here is via lake formation. So there are three services that you need to be familiar with. One is the lake formation, and the other is the glue, because every source will have a glue table and Athena for doing the analytics. So if you go, once you set it up, you can go to lake formation. And you will be able to see your databases here. So the first database is the database which was created by Security Lake. All right. And after you enable Security Lake, you have to ensure that you have the right permission in lake formation. Otherwise, you will not be able to see your database. And the user guide will also tell you, but I'll show you how you can manage it. So you select the database and you will be able to see who are the IAM or the principals. It could be either an IAM role or a user who should be able to see or view this database. So you can control the permissions over here. So under this database, you will be able to also further control which are the AWS accounts or organization which need access to these tables. So this is the DB. And if you want to see what tables it has created, you can see the tables here. And for each of the source, right, for S3, you will find a table. For VPC, you will find a table. This is Security Hub. Security Hub findings is a table. Run Route 53. Now, the reason why you're seeing _1_0 is security lake came into public, into GA in the month of June. But in this set account, I had enabled security lake when it was in preview. So after it came into GA, AWS created another instance. So when it created a new instance, it itself added this suffix. So that's why you're seeing duplicate entries. But when you set up security lake, now going forward, you should not see any _1_0. You will just see something like security hub findings.
And these tables are all in the shared service account that you said, where we have set where we
Any account, you have to decide, not necessarily be a shared service. Usually it's a shared service account, or you can create or you can choose any of the account, and you can treat that as a delegated administrator for security lake.
So can this resource or tables can be shared to the member accounts as well?
That's what we saw, right? So here in the databases, if you want to just share the DB alone, then or the table alone, you can go here and you can control which organization. You can even share it with an external organization like AWS organization. Okay. Now every table, it actually comes from a S3. So that's what Security Lake does. It basically creates a S3 bucket for each of the data source. So you can see from where the data is flowing from. So the first one is for S3 data, right? So this when you enable logging for S3 buckets, there is a data events which gets captured. So that's what this data log is all about. So it's actually coming from this S3 bucket. Okay. Similarly, say VPC flow is coming from this bucket. So let me show you how these buckets are structured. So that's also important. Okay, so here every time when you enable security lake, it will create a bucket AWS security lake, and then it will attach the region name, and then there will be unique characters here. So this is the bucket. Okay. Let me show you the Sydney region, which is my home region. Okay, so this is the security lake bucket, the main bucket, in which you will find a folder called AWS. Now there will be another folder called EXT. EXT is for external. In this setup, I do not have a custom source. If you remember, I showed you the sources, right? The sources, the custom sources. I don't have a custom source yet. So that's why I don't see the ext folder. Otherwise, you will also find an ext folder. So a separate folder will be created for external sources, which are non-AWS in nature. So let's get into the AWS folder. So in the AWS folder, you will find the folders for the default services which get ingested into Security Lake. So let's say you want to see the Cloud Trail Management, the region, and then I have two accounts in this landing zone. So for each of the account, you will find a folder. Okay. And then the buckets are partitioned by event hour. So this folder was created in 17th of July. Okay, so event first is event day, and then comes the event. The each hour you can see that there will be new files getting generated, and these files will be in Parquet format only, because the security lake data, everything has to be converted into a Parquet format. It will not understand any other format. So as a next step, let me show you how this data is handled in case you are bringing an external source, how you should convert to a format which can be brought into security lake. So it actually needs a separate demo, but I'll show you the architecture today. I'll explain you how it can be done. And then probably we'll look at it as a detailed demo in the future. So this is the architecture. So any log which you feel is a security data, and you don't find it in the list of OCSF compliance, which will be a rare scenario, but still I thought I will show you the architecture. So this is your custom log, which you want to bring it into security lake. Then you need to integrate the log with Kinesis. So the Kinesis plays a major role here. Kinesis and Glue combination is the crux of this whole engine behind security lake. So you bring in the logs. You can create a small function which will read the log and feed it into Kinesis. So there will be one ingestion Lambda function. And then in Kinesis data firehouse, you create a delivery stream. And this is where the data will get deposited. And in the Kinesis, the conversion that you need to write another Lambda, which will do the format conversion. So the Kinesis should call this Lambda. And Kinesis will internally take care of converting the format from JSON to Parquet. It will do the Parquet conversion, and it will send the Parquet files to S3 bucket, and the S3 bucket will get fed into security lake. So yeah, so say you have a tool, you don't find it in the list, or you have a log tool which you want to convert to OCSF for some reason. As I said, you have to first decide which class of OCSF you want. And then once you decide the class ID, you will get the schema. And then you have to write your Lambda functions, two Lambda functions, as I said. One will be the ingestion and one will be the OCSF conversion. So this is the Kinesis. So in the Kinesis, you always select direct put as the source and destination as S3. And this is the ingestion Lambda. So I've just given the key lines of the ingestion Lambda. So once you create the delivery stream in the previous slide, you give the name of the delivery stream, and this is the data. So this Lambda will send the data to this delivery stream. And in your Kinesis delivery stream, you will have the delivery stream created, and you will create the second Lambda function, which does the OCSF conversion. You have to link it in the Kinesis with that Lambda, and you will be able to see the glue tables that Kinesis has created. And it will send the Parquet files to the S3 bucket. And this S3 bucket will be integrated with security lake. So that's how this whole ingestion of custom source happens. All right. So how do you know whether a particular tool or any log management tool is OCSF or not? So that's pretty much easy. You can just find it in the AWS portal. So you just say security lake partners. So we saw source subscriber, right? So same thing here. When you see Aqua Security as a source partner, it means that if your customer is using Aqua Security, you can straight away you can like integrate out of the box. So Aqua Security will have a module which will talk to Security Lake. So just through button clicks, you can send the Aqua Security logs to Security Lake. So these are the source partners. Okay. And subscriber partners. Now, if you have a Splunk or Sumo Logic, right? So SIEM tools is a classic example. So customer already has a SIEM tools. Now, every customer, they have this challenge when it comes to SIEM. One is cost. And why cost is a challenge is they will be sending their entire data to the SIEM tools, which is not necessary. Even outdated data, right? So 6 months old data will also be getting fed into the SIM. They just blindly, the teams will be sending the feeds to SIM. Whether it's relevant or not, or whether it's actually needed, whether you need a 3-month-old data or a 6-month-old data, that intelligence is not practically applied because they have to security is of key concern. So they have this mindset that if you send all of the data, that means you are safe to, right? It's a general perception. Now, if you use Security Lake, first and foremost, you need not send the entire data to SIM because Security Lake is set up within AWS, and you are going to control what security lake is going to send. So for example, if I'm collecting a VPC flow log in Security Lake, I can decide whether I want to send a 30-day-old VPC flow or a 60-day-old VPC flow to SIM. So I will have the freedom to greatly control what data I want to send and how old data I want to send. So thereby, I'm able to control the storage of SIM, and thereby it's directly proportional to the license cost. So I'm able to bring down the license cost of these SIM tools greatly. So that's the advantage of bringing in a security lake for a customer who already has a SIM tool. Okay, so those SIM tools are subscribers. So it's just an example. Even Datadog, IBM Security. So any tool which is creating insight out of Security Lake is a subscriber. Even an analytics tool for that matter. So these are the subscriber partners. So this is how you check whether you need to worry about OCSF conversion or not. So you just go to the source partner list, see if your security product is listed here. If it is, then you don't have to worry about it. Service partners are those IT service companies who have worked with Security Lake, and they have been the partners. So AWS has recognized them as partners. So that's what service partner is about. Are you with me? Any questions so far?
Ajay, there are a couple of questions in the chat. Do you want to quickly take a look at it?
Yeah, okay. So how do I look at the question? Okay. Yeah, here. What is the difference between hub and lake? Okay. Security hub, it will tell you, it will check whether the standards, for example, security hub needs config to be enabled, right? So config will monitor the configuration of the resources, and it will tell you whether the configuration is compliant or not, and that's get fed into security hub. And guard duty findings, MECI findings, all of these findings are fed into Security Hub. Now, Security Hub's job is to ensure that the security posture or the security score is maintained at a good level. you will not be able to do any analytics on top of Security Hub. The purpose of Security Hub is to just show you what is your security posture like. And Security Lake objective is beyond that, right? And you would have already seen when I enabled Security Lake, I saw a table for Security Hub. So if you are enabling Security Lake, eventually you will be ingesting the feeds from Security Hub. So you don't have to, it's not a duplicate. They both are different services. Does that answer your question, Mohammed?
Yes, Rajiv, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, Arun, yeah, it was more of a statement, right? I don't think you have any question. Ibrahim, in architecture, you already shows the Kinesis firehose couldn't ingest the logs directly without Lambda function. So if you are able to directly connect your external source with Kinesis firehose, then go ahead. If you are able to do, then you can go ahead. So most of the cases, there will be an API or there will be an application which is outside of AWS. So to integrate the log files generated by that application, the preferred way of integrating is Lambda. But for in your case, without the Lambda, if Kinesis is able to ingest, then go ahead. Okay. Yeah, so let's go to the Security Lake actual demo. My screen is not shared yet, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so before I get started with the analytics, I wanted to show you certain basic things. So we saw about lake formation. So we saw the data tables, we saw the databases. We also saw how to control permissions. So if your permission is right, in Athena, under data source, this will already be there, AWS data catalog. The database which was created by Security Lake, you will be able to find that DB. Okay. Now, you can see another DB also called DB shopping cart. This is a custom DB which I created. So I was telling you, if you remember, when you ingest data into Security Lake, if the data is not a cyber data, you don't have to worry about the OCSF conversion. You can just simply put it in a S3 bucket. And if you're using Athena, you can create a glue table out of that S3 bucket, and you will get the DB here. So this is a fictitious application with and this is a log data for a sample e-commerce website. So it is an audit log. So every time a user does a transaction, the timestamp and the IP address gets logged. I can show you the schema of the data. Just query the data and show you. So this is a table which I created, a CSV file, and I got it into S3 and I created a glue table out of it. Now, why I'm showing you this is the power of analytics. Okay, so Security Lake is collecting data around Security Hub, Flowlog, CloudTrail, right? And here we have another data, which is an application logs data. So traditionally, if you look at it, I'm sure many of you are working on projects. There will be a team for application. Their job will be to monitor the application logs, or their entire scope will only be the application layer. There will be another team for operations. They will be doing infrastructure monitoring, infrastructure security. Their scope will be to ensure that the AWS infrastructure is good in terms of operations or security metrics or whatever. Now, there is very little chance that these two teams talk to each other. When I say talk to each other, it's about how much they know the other two layer. Like I have seen teams where the application team will have no idea what the AWS infrastructure is like, and vice versa. So now when you look at ensuring that this particular shopping cart application is secured or not, there are many dimensions to it. The application itself should be secure. The code should be written in such a way that nobody is able to hack. So all that the application team will take care. But whether the infrastructure in which the application is hosted, which say, let's assume that it is AWS, how secure is that infrastructure? Okay, and is there any suspicious activity happening in the infrastructure layer? So all those insights teams are not deriving today, because these two teams, they operate in silos. They'll be logically, physically separated. They won't even be aware what's going on in each other's world. So it's high time that we create a view wherein we have a unified view across the application, the infrastructure, the networking, the data, all the layers possible, create a unified view. Why? Because we will be able to derive certain intelligence which is not happening today. So I'll show you certain examples of what I'm talking about and how you can do here. So there are two DBs that you see here, shopping cart and the security lake DB, right? Now, in the shopping cart audit log, we are also capturing the client IP address. So I am a shopping cart user, and I have done a payment gateway, and I got an error. For some reason, the payment didn't go through. And I'm logging the timestamp, and that timestamp, this is the IP address from where I logged in. Now assume that I'm a hacker, okay? Now I'm trying to hack this shopping cart. I found that there is a vulnerability, or through some way I exploited a vulnerability. And I'm able to hack it and find out, say, the ID of an EC2 instance, or the ARN of a S3 bucket. I successfully was able to compromise the underlying cloud layer, the infrastructure layer. So the IP address, the client IP address, I'm using 27.62. This 27.62 will be captured by VPC flow log, or it would be captured by a cloud tray. So it's not an expected scenario where the IP address, which is accessing the shopping cart, it's not expected that the same IP address appears in a flow log or a cloud trail or any other AWS logs. If it does, then it's not it's an anomaly. It's a suspicious activity. Why is a shopping cart user IP address visible in the infrastructure layer? That itself is an anomaly. If you look at many of the cyber attacks which has happened in the past, internal employees have been a reason. Like, it's called insider threat. Internal employees have been a reason for many of the compromises. And also, it's very common for the front end or the application users to use the application as an entry point to enter into the infrastructure layer. It's happened before. So now that we have the application log and also the cyber log in a single entity, we are going to see how we can capture such scenarios. So there are many things which this IP address can do in the infra layer. I have taken a scenario where there is a shopping cart user who is hacking, compromising the application, and they are able to log in into the console through. I mean, they maybe found the account ID. Some like for example, they can get hold of the GitHub code repository through the application layer, and maybe in the GitHub code they found the account ID, and they are trying to log in into the console. So if any time when you log into the console, you should know how CloudTrail will capture it. So it captures in a specific way. So okay, let me correct the. I have to give the DB name. I choose the DB. Okay, so when the CloudTrail captures the console logins, there will be a field called operation. So you can refer the AWS documentation also. Every API, it has an operation behind it. So console login operation will be logged in like this, console login. And then these are the fields which will get populated. So if there is a unsuccessful console login, if there is a failure, if the login password is not correct, or if somebody is trying various combinations of login password, it will not enter, right? So at those times, this UID and UUID will be null. And now that I know my IP address, by joining the application audit log and the CloudTrail log, I'll be able to find whether that IP address is trying to do a console login or not. A user who's using the shopping cart, it's not an expected behavior for that user to do a console login. Right? So similarly, there are many other operations which gets captured in CloudTrail. So you can just write a simple query here. So this query is a join between, okay, I'll show you the join query. So this query is a join between the CloudTrail log and the shopping cart audit log. So I have joined with the IP address. So the IP address is the common column between CloudTrail and the audit log. I joined with the IP address, and what I've written in the query is within 24 hours of interval, if you find an IP address which is seen in the audit log, if you see that same IP address in the CloudTrail log, then that's an anomaly, and this query will catch it. So as a next step, once you write this Athena query, you can create a QuickSight dashboard out of it. Mismatched. Let me see what's the. There is some timestamp syntax here, I think, which is not running. But otherwise, this is the query. Let me see. It should run. Yeah. So yeah, the query is fine. I don't have data which is like 24 hours, so I'm not getting a result. But if within an interval of 24 hours, if you find an IP address which was found in the audit log, if the same IP address appears in the cloud trade, then this will give you a result, which is an anomalous behavior. So you can create a dashboard out of it in, say, QuickSight, and that dashboard will give you this information. So that dashboard could be used by the security operations team or any security or risk team whose job is to watch out for anomalous behavior. Any questions you have? Okay, so let me show you few more examples or odd hour data transfer, right? Okay. So this query, what it does is it joins the audit log, the application log with VPC flow log. So if there is any transaction which has happened at an odd hour, so it's up to you how you want to define that odd hour. Between midnight and 6 a.m., if there is any transaction which happened in the shopping cart application, and around the same time, around the same time, if there are any data download or data upload which has happened in the VPC flow log, then it's an anomalous behavior. So I have just given some bytes here as a threshold as to what I define as a huge data transfer. But of course, you can modify this. So this is another example of finding out an anomalous behavior. The other thing is privilege escalation. So many times what happens is the hacker will keep on giving username, password, and they will try to get into the application. So the scenario here is if there are multiple login failures. So if you see the shopping cart application, every time there is a user login which is successful or unsuccessful, failed login attempt, user login failure. So every time there is a failure, we are logging it as a user login failure, right? So with this as a clue, we are writing a query that every time there is a login failure, say 4 times or 5 times the user has tried and they get this login failure logged in the audit log, you can join with the cloud trail table. And in the cloud trail, if any of such operations has happened, so operations like attaching your user policy or adding a user to a group or creating an access key, all these are privileged users activities. So if you find any of these operations being done after a repeated login failure in the application layer, then it indicates a suspicious activity. So this is another example of how you can do analytics on security lake. Okay. Let me see if I have any more queries. Failed login. Yeah, so that's pretty much, those are the examples that I had. Okay, so any queries you have? Let me see if I have covered all the slides. Okay, so this is a snapshot of the conversion, OCSF conversion lambda. Yeah, so yes, that's all I had. We can discuss any queries you have or any thoughts that you want to share.
But I think some time back there was an security event, and we had to check every half an hour if there is any activity gets recorded in cloud trial. I think at that point of time was not very, not aware of the security lake tool. But I think we don't have the visibility at the organization level, account level as well. So we were operating at the member account, but
Okay.
there was an incident where everybody was tasked to check the cloud conformity tool to see if any high alert comes in terms of solution activity. I think I'm just trying to relate the content that you are saying, so able to relate now, so where we could effectively use. I think I'm just thinking still I'm not working on the organization level accounts, but on the member accounts, but it makes sense for me. So taking some output or taking things out of the session.
Yeah. Yes. So there are many tools like conformity, but you have to use the tool in the right way. Right. So in the conformity itself, I have not personally used it, but I know what it can. I'm not sure if it can do correlations from different sources. But if it can, we should like utilize it properly. So the other, as I said, right, when you have tools already, like the conformity and Splunk, even in Splunk, you can do such correlations. So the challenge is we are sending data outside AWS. Correct. So that's an area of concern for customers because there are regulations which needs to be followed. The less data you send outside, the better for them. And also from cost point of view, if you are sending less data to conformity, the license cost will also come down.
So I think we could keep it like a question and answer. So if anybody wants to share their experience on the security events, I think we could discuss that as well. If you have any questions, you can ask directly.
Any of you are going to try Security Lake after this session? I think nobody is trying.
So Arun is saying it's most likely will try to get hands dirty on Security Lake.
I don't know if a Security Lake workshops have already been launched. No, AWS has not yet launched workshops for it. But the user guide, let me send the user guide.
Hi. Are there any sample data which I can ingest and check?
See, when you enable Security Lake, it will ingest on its own the AWS logs.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to ingest any external data, you can, like I have created this shopping cart. I only created, I decided some columns and I created on my own. So you can input any of the CSV file that you have.
Okay, sure, thanks.
So these logs, right, as I said, it need not be, don't work on converting and all. Just put it in a S3, bring it up in Glue. That's fine. That's enough.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
And I've also seen the tool is getting integrated to SageMaker, right? I think we could.
Yeah, SageMaker can also be integrated. That's by default done. So
there are a lot of talks going on.
it's only using Athena, but apart from Athena, OpenSearch and SageMaker can also be used.
And recently, I think last couple of weeks, there are a lot of things going on around Gen AI, right? So I think we could use that for Gen AI scenarios as well, use cases as well.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, OpenSearch can be used with Security Lake. Maybe Navi will plan for a session sometime later where Security Lake along with OpenSearch ingestion, we can do a demo on that. But the user guide does talk on OpenSearch integration. Let me see. It should cover. Okay, so if there are no other questions, then can we wind up, or I'm
So,
available for the next half an hour. I'm available.
okay. So just wanted to keep the forum open because we also keep it for virtual networking. So in the physical user group sessions, people directly go and speak to the participants. So in the virtual mode, I wanted to keep it open. You can unmute if you want to share anything on AWS that you're working. We can discuss. If you want to have one-to-one, we can keep that as well through breakout session. But since the participants are less, I thought we could, if you wanted, you can unmute, you can share some of the experience that you want to share. We can have a breakout kind of small group as well if required, if people are interested. And I've maybe to start with, I've recently read about in the cloud formation, there's a for loop one has recently been, I think the support is extended for the for loop, something that I've read. I thought I'll share it. So if anybody has read something new, you could share here as well. So something that you want to highlight, something that you observed while you're working, anything that you want to share, discuss on AWS, you're welcome to discuss.
So Lambda is able to detect recursive calling. That was a recent update. So when you have recursive functions, I mean, it goes on endless loop in Lambda functions. Looks like it can detect now.
And maybe I wanted to pick your brain, Rajesh. So, in your experience, have you faced any security events for which you had to be, spend entire night resolving that issue? Anything, any specific scenarios, anything that you want to highlight? Any security events which you want to share and discuss how it was resolved?
Yeah, so recently there was an incident, but the root cause was very silly. So they had a EC2 instance which had a public IP, and that instance was in production. Right, so yeah, so the lesson learned is we should, I mean, people get overwhelmed by the reports, the security score which Security Hub gives. Many of them suppress the rule also. So we shouldn't be doing that. We should try to ensure that every resource is following the best practice. Yeah, so luckily, I mean, I shouldn't say luckily, but the reason was very, like, we didn't anticipate that would be the reason. And there was a hacker who was able to get in because of that public IP address.
And I want to share one of the experience. So not on the hacking one, but I provisioned an EC2 instance with public IP, and it was hosted a small web server. And I've actually terminated the instance, but still, when I was just refreshing my browser, it was not my web application which was coming up. So it was someone else who has provisioned it, and I could access that particular website for a few seconds. And I was just refreshing and I could see someone posted, I think the IP address was the same. The DNS, I think the public DNS which was attached to the condition was same. I
Okay.
see that application which was posted for a few seconds. Maybe I think for testing they used it.
Okay.
It kind of might have coincidence because I was testing and I terminated my instance. And when I was refreshing, I could see a new application which was coming up from others.
Okay.
So it makes me think, I think we should be very careful when you're provisioning production grade workloads. Should be very careful when using it. So I'm turning to others as well. So if anybody wants to share any of those experiences.
Yeah, hello everyone. It has to be on the security domain or we
No,
can-
anything on the AWS.
Anything.
Anything on AWS.
I would like to know how is it common to use service role, which is trusting multiple different service principles. Is it usual? Just a question so that I can next discuss something that we achieved. Let's say one service role we are creating for EC2, right? When you create from AWS console, it has to be either for a service or some identity or maybe for some other account, but a service role which is trusting multiple different services. For example, maybe it is you can associate it to a EC2 service, as well as maybe you can associate it to a Lambda service as well, Lambda function. Is it normal? Is it usual? Have you guys encountered such things?
So I'll share my experience of what we usually go for a different instance profile for EC2 instance, and the Lambda execution role is different. And try to use permission boundary, IAM permission boundary, to make sure the role, the password which is given to those Lambda and EC2 instance is not going beyond what it is supposed to do using that role. So to answer your question, I've not seen, at least in my experience, a same role being used for both the service. So individual roles are created, service roles are created and assigned to those services. But I've not used it from my side, but I feel it's the best practice to have a different roles and to go one level up, use permission boundary to restrict how we handle that. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, thanks for sharing your thoughts. Yeah, I will discuss about one use case that actually I achieved, I did for my current organization. So what the idea was to deploy EKS cluster using CloudFormation. Now, yes, we can deploy EKS cluster with EKS Scuttle or by executing a Jenkins job or maybe using Terraform. I'm not going to discuss the challenges, but let's discuss this use case that we want to deploy an EKS cluster with CloudFormation. So now the challenge is when we deploy an EKS cluster, the identity which is creating that cluster is given system master permission in Kubernetes RBAC, right? Now, let's say I want to create an on-demand offering, maybe by using service catalog, okay, so that end user can request for the cluster. Then different team will request the same CloudFormation template or service catalog template to provision the cluster. And what is the expectation? The team who is actually requesting the cluster, their email ID or their AWS role, means whatever they have associated, that should be assigned to Kubernetes RBAC, right? So basically, then how can we do that? If it is a CloudFormation, sorry, my daughter is crying a bit. I'm not. Yeah. So if we use a CloudFormation service role, then just after the cluster is created, only CloudFormation service role will have access to the Kubernetes RBAC, right? So either we do it manually, maybe some user's identity will be creating the EKS cluster, and then that user will execute some kubectl command, because after that somebody has to do kubectl, right, to connect to the cluster, and then download the AWS auth config map. This is the config map that is stored in Kubernetes, and just after the cluster got created, only that identity will have access to the Kubernetes. Nobody else can access. So if I am using a cloud formation, because if I have to do it in an automated manner, some end user identity cannot be used. It has to be cloud formation identity, right? So if cloud formation identity service role is creating the cluster, how will a cloud formation identity execute a kubectl command? That is not possible, right? Because cloud formation, you cannot execute something within cloud formation.
How do you get that when you're saying the CloudFormation provisions the EKS cluster and it has a service role to provision the EKS cluster?
Mhm.
Once the cluster is provisioned, you're saying the kubectl commands to be executed. That has to be through RBAC role, which is defined for that cluster.
Yeah.
And for that, you're saying we need to have a different role that has to be, having a permission to run that kubectl. Right? That's
No,
the-
we cannot use the different role. We have to use the same role, because after the and there is in current EKS offering, we cannot provide any parameter saying after the cluster gets created, what will be the user or identity that will have access to the EKS cluster. We cannot do that. Is by default the identity which will be provisioning the cluster, only that identity can connect to the Kubernetes cluster for the first time. Once actually that identity collects and updates the AWS auth config map, then it is up to them, like what are the roles that you are associating. Everybody will be able to connect, but for the first time only the cloud formation service role will be having access to that cluster.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it is. I think it's interesting topic that you are bringing in. So I also need to digest the information.
Well, I have one question here, Chandra. So in the CloudFormation template, when you are after you create the Kubernetes cluster, can't you create a role for that Kubernetes cluster?
No, we cannot create.
You cannot create a IAM role for
You can create IAM role using the cloud formation. Okay, let's say when cloud formation you are saying is deploying a role, it means you're creating an IAM role, but who is creating the cluster?
No, after you create the cluster.
After the cluster is created, let's say cloud formation is creating that IAM role, but there is no way, the cluster got already created, right? So the identity which was used to provision the cluster, only that identity will have access to Kubernetes RBAC. Even though you create another IAM identity using the cloud formation, we cannot associate it.
Okay.
First, we have to basically log into Kubernetes using kubectl and connect to the cluster, then update the AWS auth config map. So what we did actually, or maybe I actually came up with this solution is, I created a service role and it trusts the cloud formation service plus code build service. So same role, but in its trust policy, there are two services. One is cloud formation, another is the code build. And what I did for this solution, I actually call EKS factory. So to deploy this solution, first what I do is I create a code build project. Okay. And now this code build project and this cloud formation both use the same role. Okay, because in this roles trust policy, there are two services. Now what I do is, in first step, I create a cloud formation, an EKS cluster. Once the cluster is created, the first resource is created. The second resource is a custom resource in cloud formation. So I have a Lambda. And what that custom resource does is, custom resource means calling a Lambda function. So that Lambda function starts the build project, the code build project. So what happens is, after the EKS cluster is created, it will trigger a Lambda call and Lambda will start the code build project. And when the code build project execution starts, the role which is associated to the code build is the same role that the cloud formation used to provision the EKS cluster. So the code build will be able to successfully connect to the Kubernetes cluster. And now it will just update the AWS auth config map based on the requirement, like the team who is actually requesting for the cluster, maybe their email ID and role, whatever information you actually provide as an input. So with that approach, basically that EKS provisioning can be made in a self-service manner without using any third-party tool, completely on AWS cloud native solutions using, and it's a completely serverless. No need to use any Jenkins, Terraform, and even if you take Jenkins Terraform path, you have to come up with the front-end development part. That is, we don't need development in the sense somebody developer cannot go to Jenkins thing, and end user cannot go to Jenkins console and provision this, right? I mean, so when we're talking about end user, it may be something similar to like how we provision things from ServiceNow. So that is what an interesting thing I thought of discussing.
Nice.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing.
Good tip. Yeah.
So I think we could discuss for another 2-3 minutes, and then I think we could close after that. So anybody else wants to share any of their experiences? So then I'll take the silence as no. But before we are winding it off, I want to thank everybody for joining the session.
Oh, come. No, kulikili.
And thanks a lot, Rajit, for taking us through this security lake topic. And it was quite insightful for us. And I hope everybody has taken something out of that session which Rajit has taken today. So wanted to give a try on security lake and explore some of the things on security lake. And thanks all the participants who were like very interactive. And even at the end, Chandra said about the Kubernetes cluster, the service role one. So that was also insightful. So it helps to, everybody knows something out of the user group session. Thanks a lot. Thanks for joining for this month session.
Thanks a lot for organizing the session.
So you can provide your feedback. If something that you want to improve, you can provide that in the chat. In the meetup page, you can provide your feedback.
Yeah, sure. Great session, Raji.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nambi.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
For the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks.